My name is Amber Suggs, and I'm one of the sister authors to Tamar Stories Sisterhood, Book 1, Powerful Stories of God Redemption. And the title of my story is Hope Never Broken. I'm going to read a couple excerpts from my story. For context, I was raised in church. I knew God, the Holy Scriptures, the church community, and how to pray. Going into my freshman year of college, I prayed to God, take the pain away. This was the prayer I would pray for 25 years. I would begin counseling in my sophomore year of college. I still attended church. I cried often because the pain made no sense, with seemingly no end in sight. The truth was that the crying never really stopped. The praying never stopped. The questioning of God never stopped. And the frustration of wanting to turn away from reality never stopped. Basically, the search for peace never stopped. So, in my book, I do walk through how I arrived to this point and the source of all of the turmoil I was experiencing for majority of my life. Um, I talk about that. So I don't want to give too much away. I want to encourage you to get the book to learn the source and how I got to that point. In getting to that point, I would have to say if I had a biblical story to parallel it to, it would be the woman with the 12 years with the issue of blood. Was she depleted all of her resources in search for any remedy, any resource, any person, physician, doctors who could help her heal her issue, her physical issue? And she was willing to try anything. And so, after all of the reports about Jesus, she was willing to go to great lengths to find him because she believed on the inside, if I can just touch the hem of his garment, I'll be made whole. And it was by her faith she was made whole. My story was very similar. Just kept trying resources, people, things, counsels, um, therapy, just anything to take the chronic pain that I had lived majority of my life with. And I was willing to try anything. And what I came to learn now in hindsight is that when we tend to not process um, our depression, I'll pick that. If we don't process that, it tends to breed other things. So it leads from depression to anxiety to resentment to anger, all of those things. And so when we carry the broken pieces, it can come from um, events, it can come from our environment and how we were raised, and it can come from things passed down in the DNA. Okay, so for example, during this process of working with the book, I had come to learn that I had anxiety around money. And so when I work with my practitioner, and I talk about my practitioner in the book, and I talk about getting to that point of my touch the hem of his garment moment. But through that process, I said to my practitioner, I have anxiety around money. And so when he muscle tested me, he said, okay, this is coming from your mother's side. Tell me about that. And I don't know what he said after that. After he said mother's side, I was like, oh no, bingo. There goes the hammer hitting the nail on the head. Absolutely. And I had to go back to my grandmother and go all the way down. She lived under the Depression. My grandfather was born during the Depression. And so there were things that was passed down unknowingly. That is similar to Jacob. Jacob was very deceptive, and he learned that early on. But as time goes on, his sons will be deceptive to him. And they were not born when he was taught how to do it, when his mother encouraged him to do that. So I point that out, the parallel of how things can get passed down. Thought processes, mindsets, habits, all of those things can get passed down. And that's very important because elements we are composed of, that, as one saying says, we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So all of that participates and contributes to how we see things. Okay? So through the mental health process and the journey, I talk about my moment in a particular no talk therapy. And in the book, I talk about it very much in detail. Now, I want to give away what it is because I want you to get the book. And it was built on 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 14 through 26, which illustrates how the mind and body work together. It's a unique therapy based on the knowledge that unresolved emotional trauma and life patterns lead to imbalances in our lives. And that doesn't just impact us physically in our day to day, it impacts us spiritually as well. Because the relationship we have with God is built off of the relationship we have with ourselves. What does that look like? If we're in the business of not keeping our word to ourselves, meaning not doing the things we say we're going to do, and then do the things we say we're not going to do, then that creates a hindrance and it's not congruent in believing God can do what he says he's going to do. So if we don't keep our words to ourselves, it becomes a challenge to really accept that God will keep his word. And to see that it is very much congruent. Our journey is ours. And I encourage people to take the time to do that, to do whatever their process is. This was my process. I write about my process. And I'm very much an advocate for that because in pursuing balance, because it's not about perfection, it's about becoming balanced. In pursuing healing and balance, in the process of that, we will recalibrate our relationship with God. Because it becomes much more feasible to do the things that he asks us to do. For example, fruits of the Spirit is kindness, gentleness, and self-control. To be kind, all of those things need to take place to ourselves first. That's how we have the extension to be able to do it to others. Because it's natural to us. On the flip side to that, if we're constantly criticizing ourselves, then it becomes a familiar place when people criticize us and we become defensive. Or we criticize other people because we constantly criticize ourselves. So in doing the healing, in our healing journey, doing that, it becomes a lot easier to carry out the things of being an ambassador of Christ. Because now everything is congruent. When you can manage your mind, then you're able to take your thoughts captive. It becomes easier to renew your mind and not a chore. You own it. And when you own it, you're able to extend it. This is about freedom. There is so much freedom in Christ, but there's also freedom on the other side when you can heal your pieces and be who you were created to be. be who you are created to be because you have taken the time to deal with the things that you might have been given or the things that may have come into your path. My practitioner made a post on Facebook that um, trauma doesn't lie in the event, it lies in the central nervous system unprocessed. So when it can become conscious and you can deal with it, process it, takes the pain, takes the power, all of those things out of it. It can no longer harm you because you have done your work. Then you can come out of living in deficit, scarcity, fear, and embrace and believe and go greater than accepting that God is the source and supply of all things. And that it becomes much more easier to trust Him and to allow Him to fight your battles, not out of being defensiveness, but out of that's my choice that I'm choosing to stand in it and let the Lord sort it out. You don't always have to do something. And that's the beauty of going through the healing process, because you don't always have to do something. God will handle this thing. But you got to get to that point. My mother always says, it's not how much it costs, it's how much it's worth. You are worth it. You are worth every moment, every tear, every dime it takes you to get through your process. Your process may look different than mine. Yours may be an EMDR. Yours may be a EMDR therapist or a trauma therapist. And I'm an advocate for researching certified therapists so that you can find the method that is aligned with the objective that you want when you go through the therapy process. With that, and my story has the intentions of encouraging people that you can truly, sincerely be free emotionally and physically, because the things that we hold and lounge in our mind can come out physically. And I talk about my process in the book and how it showed up in me physically and how I tried so many different things and I kept saying this wasn't it, this wasn't it. So my encouragement to you is to know that you are worth doing the work. I know it may be easier not to do it, but on the other side, there is a freedom. There is a freedom emotionally, there's a freedom physically, and most important, spiritually. Because you will be able to embrace the spiritual teachings of Christ and be His ambassador with joy. There's so much to be said about that. So you can get the book from me, or you can find the book on Amazon. But it is my prayer is that you would definitely pursue and get on the other side of the pain, get on the other side of the brokenness, get on the other side of those things. And how much freedom, and that it is truly, sincerely able to live life without holding the chronic trauma and broken pieces. You're worth every bit of it. God will provide a way out. And that's the essence of my story, how God provided a way out for me. Despite all the things that I have been through, God still provided a way out. And I'm internally grateful that He did. Continue to ask, continue to search. He will provide a way out for